The purpose of the Global CFO Council is to provide an educational and networking forum for senior financial executives in order to share best practices, discuss current financial issues, and to learn about current topics related to the performance of their jobs. Membership is open to senior financial executives including CFOs, financial VPs, and treasurers. We hope that you'll become a member of the Global CFO Council today. To join, please visit the membership tab at globalcfocouncil.com.
Rob, I have a fun little thing I do is when I introduce the speakers. I don't read your bio, which is awesome.
Great.
Thank you for sending me. I just find stuff on the internet about you and reveal it here before you get started. So I've got a minute of notes about the CFO Council, and then I'll go into my introduction. So here we go. So this is the Global CFO Council. Love questions, put them in the chat box. If you have any, I'll pull them out for Rob as he goes along in his presentation. LinkedIn, we've got a LinkedIn group for members, and I post the Meet a Member videos there, and I also post jobs that I see. So if you are interested in quietly considering CFO roles, I post them in the LinkedIn group there for the Global CFO Council. Check that out if you're not already joined there. What is the Global CFO Council? It is an educational networking forum for senior financial executives. Got 1,500 members in 30 countries and growing. Just kicked this off kind of during COVID, so please spread the word. Senior financial executives that you know, let them know about the Global CFO Council. Do we have a charity partner? Yes. The Educational Foundation for Women in Accounting. The EFWA has been around 60 years, giving women scholarships that are pursuing degrees in accounting, undergrad, graduate, PhD. They give scholarships and mentoring. So check that out. We've got folks on this call who volunteer with that organization to review scholarships, or our officers on it. So thank you for your time and your talent. And we will have time for Q&A. Use the chat box. And I'm going to try to take back over the screen for just a second because I want to share. So give me a thumbs up, Rob, if you can see my screen. All right, so I got some pictures to share. That's why I did this. So Rob is the CEO of Service Rocket. Looks like it's a training support implementation organization and helping you deploy the tools that you need to do your business and using technology as an accelerator and force multiplier. Super volunteer in the community. Looks like Rob's not only running things over at Service Rocket, but also active in the Entrepreneurs Organization and Young Presidents Organizations. I think you were born in Australia. Is that right?
Yep.
That's not a Boston accent that you have. Moved over here to the States, but before that, University of Technology, Sydney, undergraduate in computer science, I think.
Yep.
Married, 3 kids, fan of San Francisco 49ers and the Giants. Is that correct?
I guess so. You have to be, right?
No, you don't. No, you don't at all, if you're wise. Stanford football fan, and I got a couple of things I did some deep digs to find out if you're going to get, if you had the choice, are you getting an early or late VW Beetle? What's the answer to that, Rob?
Oh, early. Come on.
And I think you're a little bit of a musician, and my wife does all my speaker research. She really gets all the credit for this. So she actually called you not just a good guitar, a very good guitar player. And who is that, Rob?
That is my idol, Joe Satriani. So
I had a Joe Satriani song queued up to play if you had been on, but I'm not gonna play that.
Get that.
I was gonna show. Oh, that I'm sorry. That's
God.
not.
There we go.
That's not
me.
you. Oh, that's not you. I'm sorry. This is. Hey, folks. Rob poorly has left open his Facebook that's completely public, and he's got some amazing videos. This guy can play. I am very impressed.
All right. So my head probably couldn't get any bigger. I don't think I play very well, but I'll take the credit. And apologize for being right on time. I gave myself extra time, but my young daughter's bike got stolen this morning. So that's why you leave a buffer time. Okay. Please pile in the questions. This is a real story about how we have rebuilt our company using some simple principles and applying technology along the way. And I'm a computer science graduate. I'm a CEO, and I have fallen in love with finance and people. and started rebuilding our company around that. So I want to talk about those principles and all my lessons. And I had lots of hair at the start of it and lost it all. And talk about the challenges of ever increasing expectations of employees that read articles on TechCrunch about what Google is giving their team, and then coming back to us saying, well, we need to do that too. And I know that doesn't happen to anybody else. So I want to talk about that, thinking logically about career planning, DEI, workforce planning, and it sounds like these are people issues, but we tackled them from a finance perspective and really brought those things together. And I presented a similar topic with the CFO leaders in San Francisco, and bringing I think, a much better version of that presentation to you today. So, okay, so we spoke a little bit about our company and myself. The key thing I want to highlight here is we're a self-funded company of about 350 people, and I started the company in 2001 with $100 Australian, which is about $16.50 US, I would think, at any point in time. And so it means we have challenges. We have to make money. We don't have investors that are just piling money in, even though we're here in Silicon Valley. And then we are very global as well. And as well as being born in Australia, my mother is from Malta and my father's from El Salvador. So if you want to understand the Bitcoin capitals of the world, somehow they come through my family tree. So as a company, our purpose is to be the single most reliable partner in the acceleration of your growth, and whether that's for our employees, which we call rocketeers, or for our customers or our partners. And that's really the mission that we stand by. What do we do as a company? We help software companies scale and build ecosystem. So do training, support, consulting, and so forth, and do that. And if you want to find out more about us, you can. Let's get into some more of the meat and potatoes. This is our core Rocketeer promise, and it's really important to us, and it actually has driven a lot of what we have done. And our promise to our employees is to help Rocketeers learn and grow so they can have an impact on their careers, their families, and communities. And we have been pretty hard on this because I have a firm belief that tech companies in particular used to be, when I started, were on the fringe, and we were doing cute things in the corner and playing with technology. And now business, especially businesses that are thriving, have such an impact on the world. And us as leaders of these companies in the finance area and the CEO or anywhere in the C-suite, we really have, from my perspective, a obligation to help build individual careers so our employees can build their families and build communities. And when we don't have great, strong families and communities, then life isn't as fun. So a little bit about us and some of the challenges of what we had to do. We now have 12 offices across many locations, 30 plus nationalities. We've got some pretty good growth, and we also have had and still have, right, because it's never ending, a lot of issues, right? We have and had data spread between many different systems and many different silos, whether that be payroll, whether that be HR, whether that be finance. We had a lot of policy inconsistencies that came up by default and came up naturally. And I don't think anybody in our company woke up and said, let's strategically build a dysfunctional system, right? I don't know anyone who does that, but I know many of us either turn up in a new job, or in my case, I had taken over the operations of the company after we had some changes in our people area. And as I started digging, it was like, hold on, there's so many inconsistencies here. How do we actually make something that's going to help the organization thrive? And I started off in the people area, but very quickly I was led into finance as the way to solve this. And we have many and had a lot more semi-automated and manual processes. And for a tech company, it's kind of embarrassing, right? Like, shouldn't we be perfect? So let's dig into some of these items. And I guess the core dysfunction that I was focused on was a misalignment between the HR and people area and the finance area of our team, of our company, right? And as I spoke to more CFOs, we have 2 on our board, and spoke to a number of others. And then when I did the talk last year in San Francisco, there was so much interest in mobility and how does this affect a company and how do we forecast what's going on. And so these are some of the items I came up with that we solved and worked through. But if you have more and want to ask questions, please get them ready, right? So one of the challenges we had is we had a lack of alignment on the workforce data. So our HR team had recently deployed a great HRIS that from all their metrics was a great success, right? We've got a great new system we deployed, an excellent HRIS. And when I double clicked into this, it turned out that finance also kept a copy of our employee records inside of NetSuite, right? Inside of our finance system. And so therein lied the first problem, that the ownership of employee data was spread between two different teams and two different areas of the company. And so there was a large duplication of data, and the HR system didn't provide the data we needed, not just for the here and now, but for the forecasting for the future. And a big part of what we want to do is we want to be able to end-to-end forecast. Lots of misalignment on definitions and processes. This one was really, really surprising to me, but hey, as you're unpeeling everything, it's amazing what you find. But every company that I look at has one finance system, but many different payroll systems, and one per country. And we then did a whole analysis and work and evaluation on different payroll companies, and the global payroll companies weren't really that global. What they would do is give you some nice reporting. They would then farm out to individual payroll systems in every country, and then they would come back and give you journal entries after the fact, which you would then try and load in and work out what to do. On the softer side, we were caught, as many other companies are, caught in a never-ending cycle of benefits comparisons. And whenever somebody there's a post on the web or a Twitter feed or a LinkedIn article, there's this constant comparison with employees of we need to provide this, we need to provide that because other companies are doing it. The next one here was inconsistent and unaudited adjustment and promotion cycles. So when we look at DEI, a lot of folks think that DEI is about the makeup of the organization. What we did is we focused and have been focusing on fairness and transparency, which has been driving our systems. So how do we work on and improve perceptions of unfairness and bias, and how do we then get the data to provide planning for headcount and career growth? Okay, so when we look at where we were a very people-centric organization, and I would say that our mantra was keep everyone happy. And what would happen is that I would get regularly, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, requests from different teams. So whether that's a team in Chile, the team in Malaysia, the team in the USA or Australia, saying, hey, another company provides this, it would only cost us $50 a month to provide that for our team. And it's a no-brainer. We should do it. And as a busy CEO, I said, yeah, sure. Now, over, let's say, 5, 6, 8, 10 years of these small decisions and these small items, what do we end up with? Right? We ended up with so many imbalances and misalignments in our systems. And speaking frank to you right now as a CEO, we almost killed our company, right, with this way of thinking. And being very vulnerable, right, I've almost killed the company twice. This was the second time, and hopefully the last time. And what it forced me to do as we were looking at our financials, we were too kind. We were too kind to our employees at the expense of the business, which is actually at the expense of the employees in the longer term. So the first thing that we did is we changed the mantra and the thinking of the company. And our mantra that we have put everything behind, and it sounds weird to say mantra in a business context, and I'm not Buddhist and I don't do yoga and all those kind of things. But the phrase is grow the tree, share the fruit. Because the way I had to try and explain it to the team was that every time you asked me for a $50 thing or a 20 ringgit thing or 100 pesos, you take a branch or a leaf off the tree or a bud. And over time, the tree is left with nothing, right? You've taken some roots, you've taken the bark, and it's death by 1,000 cuts. So I opened up to the company in 2018 and said, you know what? We've got to grow the tree. And when we grow the tree, we can share the fruit. And that was the underpinning behind what we wanted to do. And so my number one kind of lesson is getting alignment at the C level, which is what is the mantra, what is the basic principle of what you're trying to do. And we were able to get alignment, right? Remember, self-funded company in 2018 when the market's booming and we are on our knees, we're able to get everybody aligned with this thinking to say, does it make sense that we want to grow a great tree that's going to produce a lot of fruit and we want to share the fruit versus have everybody pick at the buds? And so that aligned everybody together. So huge lesson. The next thing we did was we looked at our benefits. And if anyone here has had the pleasure of trying to analyze benefits across 8 different countries, it's not easy, right? And part of the thinking of what a lot of companies do is they say, great, whichever country has the best medical, we should make that the standard. Whichever country has the best transport allowance, we should make that the standard. And the problem with that is, especially as we've seen in the last 5 years, is that governments change stuff all the time based on elections, based on many different policies. And so what happens is that you're on a road to nowhere if that is your thinking. If your thinking as a CFO is the people team will handle this, you're also on a road to nowhere and a road to surprises, because aligning everybody in benefits and the strategy is a key underpinning to being able to forecast expense and employee costs as you grow and headcount costs. And we all know it's the $50 allowance, it's the $20 of this, it's the $80 of that starts to add up over time. Not only that, it's the processing time, right? So let me talk through the pyramid and what we built. And there are some words in here that should be foreign to you, and I'm going to explain them and also explain why they're foreign, right? And why we deliberately did that. So if you look at this pyramid, what we did is we at the bottom of the pyramid, we abstract away, this is the computer scientist in me saying, let's abstract away what is the local requirement or what is market expected. And what this says is, if your country says you have to legally do this, that's where it goes. Or if your country has an expectation that it's done and you can't hire anybody without it, that's where it goes. A perfect example of this is Australia and the US. In the US, if you don't provide private health insurance, nobody's going to join your company. In Australia, health insurance is free, but private insurance is extra, right? But it's not mandatory. So that phrase, private health insurance, to the Australians is offensive if you don't provide it, right? And you give it to somebody else. And in the US, it's like mandatory. If I don't have this, I can't go to work. Now, you need to be market sensitive, because a former C-level at our company went to our Australian office and said, hey, look at your benefits package. We pay your medical. And it was law, right? So it's not really good if you're telling your employees, we're paying you what the law tells us to pay you, right? It's not really a benefit from their perspective. So what we did is we abstracted that away. And what that means is that's not negotiable, right? If you're in one country, you can't complain that another country is getting something at that base layer, right? So we established the ground rules. The next layer on top is kind of 50-50 because insurances work different in every country, right? And we have a internal statement say got your back, And so that phrase is all about insurance. For us in this context is about insurance and retirement. So we want to provide good retirement plans and good insurance. Okay. And again, that's a little bit different by country, but the same intent is there. Everything above that is standard. If I'm a manager in Chile and I'm managing somebody in the UK, I manage them the same way because all their allowances are the same. Okay. And this structure has worked really well for us. And so there's a couple of things that we did here. The first thing that we did is we have a lookup table, which is standard. And it basically says for this allowance, whether it be like wellness, for example, if you're in this country, this is the amount. If you're in India, it's this amount. If you're in Australia, it's this amount. If you're in Singapore, it's this amount. If you're in Canada, it's this amount. So we have published lookup tables of all of these. Okay. And the beautiful thing has been that just 2 months ago, we released our first inflation package for the company. And because everybody's on a standard allowance, we just said, look, our Rockatoria and our tech choice allowances are raising by 15%. Done. And we were able to model that across the whole company, and everybody got an update. And it was easy. It was fair. It was consistent. Okay. So let's come back to this, because we created a strategy, and it has taken us 3 years to align things to the strategy. And in January, we should be there. So it takes time. The reason for this is as you define your new allowances, you need to wind down your old processes and policies and ramp up the new ones, and give people the flexibility if they've already planned on the old one to the new one, and obviously make the new ones more attractive. Now, some of our allowances are actually lower, and there is a couple of concepts that we did. The first one is that we call them no hassle allowances. And we call them no hassle because we do not want to see a receipt. Right? According to Expensify, an expense report costs $20 US to process. Right? We were getting expense reports for $3. Right? So not only are we paying somebody the pleasure of $3 for an app or something silly, we are processing it. Right? So we're not growing the tree. That's for sure. Right? So there has been a change in mindset to say, look, we don't want to see receipts. We're just going to give you the money. There is basic pushback saying, but I have to pay tax on that. And we're like, great. We'd rather you pay tax on more money you're getting than us hold all that back and us spend a whole lot more money and the tree is smaller. So we go back to the grow the tree, share the fruit, and say, if our company doubles or triples in size, why do we want to burden the company with processing expense reports? Why do we want to keep increasing that cost, right? And so we were able to align to say what fits with the principle, okay? So all of our allowances, where we are legally allowed, and this is like almost all of them, we don't collect receipts. We just give money. We don't audit what people do with it. We give them money in a category with an intent on a fair lookup table. If somebody wants to buy Bitcoin because that's going to help their wellness, that's their decision, right? So, and then we have some internal jokes from that perspective, but it basically just illustrates that this is for you. You decide what you're going to do with it. There are other kind of sub policies, and I'll talk about tech. I'll talk about these in order. So tech choice is started off, we actually did this over a decade ago. We launched a bring your own device policy, and we now expanded it into multiple levels. So everything with technology. So tech choice has 3 levels as an example. Level 1 is everyone gets it, and it's an allowance. It might be, $80 or $100 a month, depending on where you are. And it covers things like internet, phone, apps, right? I never want to see a receipt for a $3 app, right? That I'd never own because I can never get it from you, right? And it covers all the basic technology items. Level 2 is bring your own device. And we pile a lot of money into this, right? I do not want to spend, as a CEO, I don't want to spend any money on FedEx shipping laptops around, right? It's kind of wasted money. It's bad for the environment. That nobody wins except for FedEx, right? You have an employee, you never want to give somebody a secondhand laptop, right? Welcome to the company. Let me give you this laptop from somebody that left a month ago that's been here for 3 months. Here it is. Not only have I paid to ship it back from them to me and from me to you, I'm giving you something that just doesn't feel great, okay? So in our BYOD program, we are generous, we are aggressive, right? The tree gets stronger if everybody's on BYOD. We have 90% plus coverage across the company on BYOD. We have strict security on it, so we have the ability to take control of the machine and wipe it at a moment's notice. So folks are encouraged not to store their personal photos and things on their laptops as their single storage, and note that for any security reason, because we work with some very large companies, that machine is basically, we are leasing it and we have full control and we can wipe it at any time, okay? I'm going to skip Rockatoria because I've got a slide on it next. Fraternity was an interesting one. How many of you are wrestling with maternity leave and what to do with maternity leave? We have this thing between countries where in Australia we're really good. Aussies will give you a year, and then you've got some countries that won't give you very much, USA, and then various in between, right? So what we did is we looked at this and said, okay, let's go back to our mantra, right? How do we grow the tree and how do we share the fruit? And we had a team get together and say, you know what? In my previous company, we got, 1 year paid leave as an example. And I had my kid and I stayed on employment, and the day that I came back to work, I resigned, right? And so it was like, wow, okay. So some folks don't intend to come back to work. Some folks want more time off. And we asked the question, what is causing the anxiety and what does the business want? And the business wants mothers to come back to work when they're ready and for them to be effective when they get back to work. And so all of the plans that were out there, country by country, basically were binary. It was a switch. You're on maternity leave, doesn't matter how long or who pays for it, and flick a switch, you're back at work. And my wife's had 3 kids. I don't pretend to even share a fraction of the load, no matter how much I do. But even psychologically, how do you go from nursing a kid and then going back to work full time? So what we created was a program called Fraternity, which was, it doesn't matter what your country gives you or how much time you want to take off, paid or unpaid. We're going to have a standard plan under wellness called Fraternity that gives you 8 weeks. It gives you 4 weeks paid full time at 3 days a week, working anywhere you want at home. And then it gives, 4 weeks, 2 days a week, and then 4 weeks at 3 days a week. So we pay full time, but we expect 2 days a week for 4 weeks, 3 days a week for the next 4 weeks, and then you're back at work. So what we focused on wasn't the benefit of how long do I get off. We focused on how do we adjust the ramp to return back to work. And it's predictable. The company doesn't lose if somebody decides never to come back, right? So we're aligning it with growing the tree, right? And it's fair for everybody. It says, hey, if your country gives you 1 year maternity leave, it may be because you're paying higher taxes in that system, right? So let's keep that under local requirement, but let's make the return to work ours. Okay. And I'll talk about Rockatoria. And I want to share a little bit of a story because this is I don't know if we have any Aussies on the call, but the good-looking gentleman next to me there with the big scissors, his name is Les Shirato, and he is my mentor, and he runs Australia's largest coffee company called Victoria Coffee. And Les has been kicking my ass regularly for a decade. And had I listened to him, I probably wouldn't have killed the company. But because I did listen to him, I was able to save it. Okay. And Les, out of the goodness of his heart, built a cafe in our Sydney office. I mean, don't we all want a mentor like this, right? And we called it Rockatoria. So we came up with this name, and you can see us there both having a coffee. And all of our other offices, what did they say? When are we going to get a Rockatoria? Right? And so what we did is we said, well, And now the world's going remote. The essence of the relationship and the love that we have is a mentoring and bonding relationship that we could sit down and have a cuppa and talk about stuff. And think about how often do you grab a coffee or do something with somebody in your team. So what we did is we created a Rockatoria allowance. We created a specific allowance that says, hey, this is the spirit. It's for you to connect with anyone that you want to. Go for a coffee, go for a virtual coffee, send them a gift on Amazon, whatever you want to do. Again, no hassle. We don't need to see the receipts, right? But I don't want to get receipts and expense reports for $10 of coffee because you went for a coffee, right? So I don't want to process it. And so we created culturally a standard and a meaning on this allowance. And I put there, who else has a Rockatoria allowance? Because this is one that I could beat Google at, right? Google doesn't have a Rockatoria allowance, right? So again, when you think about this, that's a little bit cheeky, but when you think about putting your benefits together with your people team, make them unique to your culture and company, because they have a story behind them and they have a meaning behind them that just can't be copied and pasted. Okay. All right. I might pause here for a second, Robert, and see if there's any questions before I jump into more technical stuff.
We do. There's some quick ones. So rapid fire questions, rapid fire sort of answers. First, I want to start and say I'm so proud. You're the first CEO I've ever seen that has admitted they've almost killed the company multiple times. So good job. And I've written down grow the tree, share the fruit. The first time I'm going to give you credit that I say that. And then after that, I'm going to just say, as I always say, grow the tree, share the fruit. Question number one is a couple people typed in there about timing of the allowance. Do you give it all when they start or at the beginning of the year, or is it spread out over the year? How do you handle timing?
They just go in with payroll on a monthly basis. We do have a semi-formal program for tech choice for BYOD, because especially when you hire young people, they're like, I don't have $3,000 to buy a computer. Can you kind of finance it for me? And we're like, yeah, we'll work something out. We need to formalize that and make it meaningful, because the cost to a company in the IT department to go and procure a machine, bring it back, set it up, ship it, and do that, it's just, how do you get rid of that? So
any instances of either the allowance or the technology where you have any sort of timing issues, people leaving after a really short period of time? Have you seen any?
That's zero. I think once somebody's been there for a couple of weeks, the company owes them stuff anyway in some kind of payout. So you would take it, if you did that, you would take it off the payout amount, and I still think you would come up ahead. Unless you're hiring somebody and you credit them and they leave in a week, which I think you've got a much bigger problem if that's happening. But we run this BYOD device, Tech Choice, since about 2011, 2012. We were really early on it, and it's only gotten bigger and stronger. So initially we were providing Windows Dell machines, and their engineers wanted Macs, and we couldn't afford them. So we said, look, we'll just give you the money that we would have spent on a Dell, and you can buy whatever you want. That's how it started.
Rob, what sources of data are you using for the benchmarking to get ideas for that pyramid about either are you being unique or what other folks are doing? What have you found as good sources for data?
We're very poor from that perspective. What we have been doing is just converting everything we've got so far and getting it fair. And as an example, we've just been ratcheting up. Like, for example, and I'm open with the company, right? Like, the BYOD program is an allowance that if the company gives more, we get more because we get more people on the program, right? Whereas a Rockatoria allowance, we give, the measurement back isn't tangible, right? Because it's more in good feelings and mentoring. So you want to make sure that the allowances you have that have a direct impact on the tree, you're really strong at. And we get feedback from our employees. We get feedback during interviews when we explain the allowances, and people are like, wow, you get paid this much to use your own computer. And someone's like, I've already got my own computer. Man, that's just extra cash. I was like, great, that's exactly what we want. So we've been hyper aggressive on, especially the technical ones, because quite honestly, if 100 people came in tomorrow and said, we don't want to use our own machine, we want you to provide one, that would be a big problem, right?
Rob, early on you mentioned that you've handled your cash flow just bootstrapping. And it could be difficult for anybody, certainly difficult if you're bootstrapping a growth company. And so a bunch of accountants, I saw in the message, boom, 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 boom. A couple sentences about that. What have you found some keys to your success in bootstrapping the organization?
Les, who's in front of me right now, says, he calls me Robbie, and he's the only one that's allowed to call me Robbie. I'll just say that. He said, Robbie, every day I get a printout of our bank balances and I put it in front of me. It's in front of me every morning. And I mirrored that by getting an email at 5 a.m. every day from NetSuite that says, here's the cash balance. One of the things that we built, and there was a case study written on us by HSBC. We automated our cash flow reporting with HSBC. I mean, who else has their bank write a case study about them and how they manage cash flow, right? And let alone HSBC, right? So that's out there. And we did the work to break down our purchasing workflow. So what we feed into HSBC is everything we know we're going to buy and when, and not just a purchase order. We go down to when are the payments due, right? Because in most systems you'll get a PO, but it's like, hey, it's somewhere, it's going to get paid. We actually go down to the what day is this getting paid, and so we're really strong on that now, and we feed that data into HSBC. We feed our employee data into our payroll data into HSBC, and we feed our payables in there. We use a product called YayPay on the payable side, so that we can chase down receivables in a really strong way. DSO for us sits at around 35 to 40. We do have some large deals which stretch that every now and then, but our late receivables is like, less than a dozen out of several hundred invoices a month, right? Less than a dozen count. So that's on that side. And it's coming back to the mantra, right? When people are asking to buy something, there is now a default question internally, which is like, how's it going to grow the tree, right? And I want to talk, I don't think I've got a specific slide on it, but and this is probably a whole presentation in itself. And Robert, I guarantee you this is going to spawn 1,000 questions, right? We had 7 different variable payment bonus commission plans in our company, right? We now have 1. The entire company runs on the same plan. It has 2 main components. One is based on goals. One is based on EBITDA, right? All the CFOs will be happy because we use EBITDA. And when we first released that, folks thought it might have been an NFT token or something, right? So everyone in the company is gold on EBITDA of the company and their goals. And the plan is called Share the Fruit, right? And there's a whole presentation for that, but we and this is the killer, right? Even our sales teams are on the same plan. We got our sales teams off, let's just sell something and get it over the fence, which is more of a traditional plan, to no, I actually care about the EBIT. I care about the gross margin of this deal. Our sales team is reporting deals in gross margin because they know it's going to affect the EBITDA. So anyway, we'll keep going, and if we have time, we can come back.
Rob, I'm going to hold the rest of the questions because it's already 12:44. So I'll let you go. I'm going to mute myself and then save a couple minutes for me at the end for more questions.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So global payroll, and I'll give you just some bigger tips on this. This is what we found was that the way systems were typically done, at least for us and everyone I spoke to, was, HR kind of works with payroll, and then somehow we tell finance what happened. And I was like, this is crazy. How can I run the finances of the business if you're telling me after the fact what happened, right? And so what we did, we analyzed all the global payroll companies that were out there. They're horrible, right? They kind of still follow this framework. So down the bottom is what we wanted. Why don't we do everything in our system and then tell the payroll companies, just go and process it. And then, yeah, we'll get some journal entries to audit, but we want to be in control. Here is the result, okay? What I'm showing you here is these two are the same graph. One is broken down by country, and the other is just broken down by allowance. Remember I showed you the allowance pyramid? These are by quarter, the allowances that we pay in US dollars broken down by allowance. And you can see in here, this light, there's a light blue one. That's when the wellness allowance came in because we converted an older thing. And the current quarter, all the payroll hasn't finished being processed and set up because we run on 2 dates a month. But you can see here, we have full control of our allowance program entirely. And on the bottom right in that graph, we have it by country. So we know which country, what allowance has taken up what. And we share this with all of our managers, right? Look, our allowance bill has doubled, right, in the last year. And this is great. Now, from a financial perspective, we are modeling this, and we send the data to the payroll companies to process. Not the other way around. We don't get any surprises, right? You can't run this. You can't run payroll these days and just expect, oh my God, what happened, right? How do you manage a budget that way? So we're able to forecast, we're able to increase, we're able to make changes that are fair and transparent with what's going on, and we have the data. So the other part is we actually see this growing as a huge part of our company and our compensation package, because you've got base salary, you've got share the fruit, your variable, you've got stock equity, and then you've got an allowance program that's going gangbusters. So our goal is to keep increasing the allowance program. The other part of it is that the allowances, depending on the jurisdiction, some of them are free from all the extra overloads that you have to put in by country, right? So you get a little bit more flexibility into how much you can pay, and you can reward the people that are here, not the people that are going, right? So that's our goal is always reward those that are present, right? That are helping to build things. So that's because that's the majority of your people, right? So that's an example. This is actually straight out of our system. You can see Rockatoria allowance is growing. You can kind of see that moving, right, as we go through. What we also did is, instead of having some companies do annual adjustment and promotion cycles, the market is way too dynamic for us to do that. So we do a monthly adjustment cycle where anybody whose anniversary has come up, we take care of them. And then we have been doing a quarterly promotion cycle. And what we are doing specifically in NetSuite here is we don't do random one-off adjustments or random one-off promotions. We create a cycle object, and we add things to the cycle, and then we process the cycle. And the idea here is that our legal team, who also run our DEI audits, audit the cycles and say, right, every adjustment or promotion that's in there, the manager has to submit the form and the reasons and every reason why. And what we had found previously was, with some of the HRIS systems, they're not as tight as I would think they should be, right? So we have data for audits, we have data to make sure that it's fair, and we have these in cycles. And what we did, Robert, and everyone on the call, in our inflation buster package, right? What we did is we said, great, we're going to increase allowances. And then what we also did is I'm trying to run, I do triathlons, and there's two ways you can get faster. You can either take bigger steps or you can take more steps, right? Cadence or stride length. What we opted to do is to change, because of inflation around the world, we opted to change our cycle, instead of 12 months to be 9 months for the next year. Right. So in essence, we're giving 25% extra to folks that stay, because we're going to do 9-month adjustment cycles. Rocketeers feel like, great, you've got my back because you're taking care of me more often, versus the other approach of, oh my goodness, the world's inflation is going crazy. Let me blanket just increase everyone's pay by 10% because it feels good. And then what happens the day after that? Someone else sends an article saying, well, it should have been 12%, right? And so from a CFO perspective and a planning perspective, thinking about how to do that. And I'm going to quickly jump through these. We have been importing, we built a custom module to import all the different salary survey data that's out there. And what we then do is we then map them to our own job profiles. And basically what I wanted to show you was that the blue on the left, every month now we snapshot our own salary bands. So we take every single job profile, we snapshot the lowest and the highest of that job profile by location, and we track. You can kind of see this is where we are, which is nice and clean in the blue. And then we look at, like, for example, this is the Radford data in the red for the same thing. And the Radford data is all over the shop, right? And there's so many gaps. And then what we end up doing is building a published guideline on the right-hand side in the black. And we're in control now of our salary ranges. Employees want to be treated fairly. There's two ways to do it. You can either say, I'm going to go and pay you according to what Radford tells me. And that's kind of crazy because Radford data isn't always accurate. You're at the mercy of whatever somebody else put in. And it has a lot of holes in it and is a little bit inconsistent. It's good. But you're at the mercy of whatever someone else says you will adhere to. And that's your contract implicitly of fairness, right? What we're doing is saying, well, that's one source of data. We're actually taking multiple sources of data and we create our own guidelines. And our team wants to see that they're being treated fairly as compared to everyone else, right? So it's important that you have your own foundation for that. So, and I think my slides are, did I miss one? I might have missed one. There we go. This is the one I missed. What we actually did here is we built our own career pathway. So basically we have, many job families, we have many levels. We created all of our job profiles and we made sure that all of these profiles and all of this data was also in NetSuite, because you can't manage a person if you don't know their job profile and if you haven't mapped that job profile properly. So the marriage of that data, what we wanted to get away from is having all of that in the HR system and just being blind from a finance perspective. All right. So, Robert, that's my last slide. My email is here for questions, and I'll answer as many as you have.
That's a perfect transition. Some of the questions I'll hit you rapid fire with. And number one is, in that last slide, when you had those career banding, how do you handle technical tracks versus like a management track? Do you have folks that are more, hey, I just want to be technical and I want to be an SME? And do you have folks that are like, hey, I want to be a manager. I want to be a manager of managers.
Yeah, there is individual contributor track and manager track. So we have both. Manager track starts at level 4 for us, and individual contributor goes to 8.
I worked at a lot of places that we spend money on continual learning and reskilling, and we want people to do it, but we've had a heck of a time getting people to do it, to better themselves and to pursue their education and their skills. Have you had any luck with getting people to take you up on investing in themselves and learning new skills and training? And how are you doing it if you actually got the keys to success?
Oh, so this is exactly where we are right now. What we've done with our levels. So in my mind, I split them into 2. There is technical skills, then there's leadership skills. We built in the company a series of leadership behaviors, and our leadership behaviors are not our values, because values to me are something people agree with. Leadership behaviors are things that you do and you don't do. They're very black and white. And we have been rolling out a leadership training program based on those leadership behaviors. What happens in our system is that we have a kudos module in our HR system, right? People can give a kudos and give badges. Those badges actually map to leadership behaviors. So all of those things are aligned. And then we have a matrix which says if you're a level 5, this is the competency of each leadership behavior down to the bullet point that we expect. And the whole company gets assessed every year on those leadership behaviors. So we're focusing on that versus the technical skills, because the technical skills are very fast moving, and it's hard to verify and validate, how good somebody is at Python compared to somebody else. And it's the leadership part that we do. So
pull the string on that, Rob, to the next question is around, I don't know what the right term is. I'm just going to call it pay and benefits equity. That's kind of a hot topic,
Yep.
maybe fairness or something. But then how do you balance that with performance equity? And everywhere I've ever worked, 80% of the people do, or excuse me, 20% of the people do 80% of the work. And whenever I've banded performance, there is a significant difference in my best team member in an area than the worst two team members. How do you have you cracked the code? How do you balance performance and pay in that, using that data set that you have?
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So within each level, we're now building bands so that we have a breakdown within a level of kind of like performance, contribution, and potential, right? Your typical 9-box stuff that we're putting in there. Your fruit bowl, if I call it that, right? The size of your STF component, depending on your level, actually gets bigger as a percentage, right? So if you're a level 6, it's a lot bigger than if you're a level 2, right? So your seniority, it grows. And then remember I said half of the variable system is based on goals. Your goals are actually transparent. Everyone's goals are transparent. So what happens, the incentive we have there is that if you're going in for a promotion, what we want to audit and say, well, if I've got 3 people going in for a promotion, let me look at their goals, because they're both the same level. They're all the same level. Let's see what people are doing. And if someone's lowballing all of their goals and smashing them, and someone's, stretching themselves, you have a comparison for fairness. So all these things need to continually intertwine, and you have the independence of someone looking over it to say, hey, this doesn't look good. The beautiful thing actually about the auditing the promo cycles is we actually audit them before we do the cycle. So straight away, when a cycle is created and all the submissions are in, we're able to say, hold on, this doesn't represent the organization. Why is there only, dudes in someone's team, right? Why this doesn't represent the organization? What's going on, right? So we're actually able to catch that stuff, those biases early. What we did find in our system, the biggest area that we have been focusing on is immigrants. In any country, somebody who has immigrated to that country and is sponsored on a visa is less likely to ask for more money, right? Because, hey, I'm on a visa, I don't want to rock the boat, I'm not in a great position of power. And our biggest re-leveling exercise during all of this wasn't gender or race. It was the immigration status was our biggest thing.
Rob, I got 20 other questions, but I got one more. I got time for one more, so I'm going to hit you up. And there were like 5 private messages in the chat box when you're talking about the bonus, and that a significant portion, 50% maybe, is around EBITDA, and that everyone on the call agrees that that's completely critical. But can you speak to maybe the concern of employees or folks that were listening, that not everybody's in control of EBITDA, within the organization, and how do you, of course you have to have that as a super key point, but how do you sell that to the team that, hey, I don't have authority or responsibility over that, I am an XYZ contributor? How do you sell that to them?
So I'm happy to do another whole session just on this if you wanted some more insights. I think there are a couple of things. I think everyone is responsible, right? Versus am I accountable for it? And I think that's an organizational cultural thing. And if you want to be a lone ranger, this might not be the best place for you. However, you don't want to start with that, because if you can't demonstrate that you're a team, then having that kind of talk is not going to help you. There is a lot of work that we're doing around the theory of constraints, and anyone who hasn't researched that stuff, I would recommend to go back through it. But ultimately, we are like a band, and we play the tempo of the drummer, and the drummer is the slowest team in the organization. whether that be the sales team or whether that be the delivery team or the engineering team or the finance team, whatever it is. And we are one team at that tempo. And it doesn't help the organization hit the goal of making money if you have, or making great music, right? In that analogy, if you have everyone playing off tempo, right? So there is a leadership aspect that's needed here. And this is one of the blessings that we had, is that because I messed up royally, man. I had to go back in and rebuild all this stuff, and I didn't have anybody to hand it over to. And I'm like, how would I build this so that we make it the best in the world? And that was the mindset. So it's actually been really a really fulfilling process, right? So, but I'm happy if any of these topics are of interest, happy to like share more knowledge and help out. So.
Well, Rob, this was fantastic. As you were speaking, I actually wrote down that you run the company like you're a musician in the band, part of the team, and seeking harmony. It sounds like an absolutely fantastic organization and a super interesting read about what you're doing as a company and then how you're growing your company.
I have one more thing, and I forgot to mention this. We don't have a CFO, and I need to hire one. So is this a good place to mention that?
Yeah, I will post something in the Global CFO Council LinkedIn page. If I can help spread the word, I'd be happy to do that for you. And as I said, Rob, I'm totally stealing grow the tree, share the fruit. First time you get credit. After that,
you get a bill.
Say, as I always said, grow the tree, share the fruit. And I will be sending out Rob's contact information on the company, the PowerPoint presentation, and a link to this recording if you want to share or re-listen. Rob, thank you, and thank you to the entire team at Service Rocket. Tremendous organization. Appreciate you sharing this case study, these lessons learned, hard lessons learned, with the rest of the group. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.